I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Walsh.
Here.
Commissioner Surratt.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Sabota.
Here.
Commissioner Thacker.
Here.
At this time, I would like to open the public input portion of the meeting. This is not related to the item on the agenda tonight, but anything that is not an agenda item that you'd like to speak about, please step to the podium. At this time, seeing no movement from the gallery, I'll close the public input portion of the meeting. At this time, I'd like to open file Z913. The applicant is Full Circle Communities, Inc., 310 South Peoria, number 500 in Chicago, 60607. For property owner John Co. Properties, LLC, care of John Colmer, 312 Shepherd Hill Lane, McHenry, Illinois, 60050. The requested actions tonight are as follows. A zoning map amendment from RS4 high-density single-family residential and C4 downtown commercial to RM2 high-density multifamily residential. A variance from the minimum requirement front yard in the RM2 zoning district. A variance from the off-street parking and loading requirement. Also, we'll touch on we'll vote on a preliminary and final subdivision plat approval, and any other variances required to develop the subject property in substantial accordance with the site, landscape plan, and building elevations submitted for this petition. The location of the subject property includes 3512 West Pearl Street, 3516 West Pearl Street, 3518 West Pearl Street, and 1404 North Richmond Road, otherwise known as Illinois Route 31, and is generally located at the northeast corner of Pearl Street and Richmond Road, Route 31, including the current city right-of-way located immediately north of the subject property. At this time, we have return receipt from the Northwest Herald, signed affidavit from the petitioner here on file. Everybody's sitting at the table there in front of me. If you're not an attorney, please raise your right hand. Please swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Each one of you, please state your name and address for the record.
Lindsay Haynes, Full Circle Communities, 310 South Peoria, number 500, Chicago, Illinois, 60607.
Jordan Bartle, Full Circle Communities, 310 South Peoria, Suite 500, Chicago, Illinois, 60607.
Therese Thompson, Cordigan Clark and Associates, 710 North Wells Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60654.
Thank you very much. We have some additional people that a raise of hands here.
Need the microphone or can?
Please just state your name and address for the record.
All right, Andrea Inoue, Full Circle Communities, 310 South Peoria, Suite 500, Chicago, Illinois, 60607.
Andrew Johnson, McHenry Consulting, 900 Woodlands Parkway, Vernon Hills, Illinois, 60061.
Katie McGlory, Over the Rainbow Association, 2040 Brown Avenue, Evanston, Illinois, 60201.
Eric Huffman, Over the Rainbow Association, 2040 Brown Avenue, Evanston.
I think we have everybody, right?
One more.
One more.
Laura Franz, TLS Veterans, 5330 West Elm, McHenry.
All right. Now that that's done, Jordan, the floor is yours. Please tell us why you're here this evening.
I'm going to have Lindsay start.
Excellent.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Haynes. I'm the Vice President of Full Circle Communities. And first, I just want to say thank you very much to the city staff, all of the commissioners here this evening, and all the residents that came out tonight as well. Full Circle Communities is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are dedicated to providing housing and contextual services for our tenants. We're based in the Chicago area, but also do work in the rest of Illinois, Iowa, and a little bit of work in Florida and Michigan as well. We have a little bit of capacity built up here in McHenry County and are happy to bring a proposal here before you tonight, building on the other work that we've done in the area to bring much needed housing for veterans and persons with disabilities to the site mentioned. We spend about $850,000 a year on providing wraparound services for our properties, partnering with really great other nonprofit organizations to spend those service dollars and provide our tenants with the best quality of life possible. Here tonight we're working with the Over the Rainbow Association and TLS Veterans, and it's a partnership building on past work with both organizations, and we're really excited to be able to bring it all together here tonight. We do all sorts of work, housing for seniors, families, and specialized developments like this that are focused on persons with disabilities and also veterans. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jordan Bartle, who's the project manager for this development.
So the project at hand is Pearl Street Commons, and it is 25 units targeted to veterans and people with disabilities. And like Lindsay said, this is a culmination of our relationship and partnership with TLS and Over the Rainbow Association. Full Circle is acting as developer and then owner and manager, and then TLS and Over the Rainbow, they will be our service provider partners and also be providing referrals as well, tenant referrals to the site. So like Lindsay said, we will be using part of our economics to provide services to the residents, so that how we do that is we kind of come up with a plan through input from the tenants themselves and our partners. Examples of services would be help navigating the VA system, benefits assistance, social activities, transportation assistance, and all these services are voluntary and at no extra cost to the tenants. So the building, 25 units, but it also will have communal amenities like a common room, laundry room, tenant storage, and a library and computer room, as well as an office for our on-site property manager and the on-site service coordinator. Then the building will be green certified through Energy Star and Enterprise Green Communities, and we also will have permeable pavers in the parking lot and native landscaping to help the stormwater. The building and the units will be accessible or adaptable, so the building will have an elevator, and the units will have features such as wider doorways and hallways, grab bars in the bathroom, roll-in showers, and removable base cabinets so someone in a wheelchair can pull up to the counter better. We're also working with the Paralyzed Veterans of America group. They have staff architects who are helping us put together our plans to make sure that this can be as accessible as possible. This proposal comes fully funded. We have all of our capital funding lined up, and we don't rely on any ongoing state grants. So whatever happens at the state level, we can still move this project forward. And our funding comes from the Illinois Housing Development Authority. We got tax credits from them. We have a bank loan. We have a grant from an energy efficiency grant from the utility companies. We have a housing grant from McHenry County, and we also got a grant through the Bring Them Homes program, which was funded by Citibank, and it's for building housing for veterans. So some of the community benefits for this project, this is approximately $7 million project that isn't requiring any city financial or tax incentive contribution. It's going to create about 40 temporary construction jobs and 3 permanent jobs. And then this has been a piece of vacant land for about 12 or 15 years that will be developed then. So our ask today is a zoning map amendment from RS4 and C4 to RM2, a variance on the minimum front yard setback, variance for the off-street parking requirement, and preliminary and final subdivision plat approval. And if we're successful, the timeline would be, we would hope to close in November of this year, and then the construction period would be about 11 months, so it would be about fall of 2018 that we would be done with construction and residents would be able to move in.
Excellent, thanks, George.
Thank you.
Did you want to jump in, or are you here for support for later?
I'm here for support for later and to answer questions, architectural questions.
Excellent, excellent, thank you so much. At this time, staff, please give us your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief and go through all just the technical requests. So the property is currently zoned RS4, which is high-density single-family residential, and C4, which is downtown commercial, and it is being proposed to be rezoned RM2, high-density multifamily residential. It's also the second request is a variance from the minimum front yard building setback requirement. So that would be for the building being constructed immediately on the eastern part of the property. Also a variance from the off-street parking and loading requirements. Typically this type of use, many of the residents do not drive. So that's requested variance for that, as well as preliminary and final subdivision plat approval. So the applicant is proposing to subdivide the property into 2 lots. This property is an infill property in the midst of an established neighborhood. Richmond Road was 2 lanes and it's now widened to a 5-lane cross section. It's surrounded by many different types of land use, commercial, residential. Traffic circulation at Pearl and Richmond's heavy, problematic at times. Any use should not spill over or adversely impact adjacent uses, create cut-through traffic through the neighborhood, that type of thing. Residential is certainly appropriate, however, single-family residential at this location is not the highest and best use. Commercials is also appropriate, however, the intensity of the commercial must not adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood to an extent. So it's a challenging property for to develop. The property is in close proximity to downtown, however. Shopping, it's also located on a PACE transit route, which makes it an ideal site for this type of project. There's 2 routes in the city that PACE serves, fixed bus routes 806 and 807. PACE serves fixed bus routes as well as paratransit, and the city participates in the paratransit service along with many communities throughout McHenry County. So the residents here would be able to use either of those services. And I know Full Circle has worked with PACE in the past, and I know they've communicated preliminary with Mary Donner from PACE, and there may be a PACE shelter built at this location to service this property because many of the residents would not drive. So the ideal land use of this site should be one that's transitional in nature, one that incorporates some features of the surrounding neighborhood, but one that includes more modern conveniences, takes advantage of the location on the periphery downtown, has access to the transit within walking distance. This is within walking distance to the city's main park, Veterans Memorial Park. It's downtown, shopping, restaurants. You know, this is the third, funding round for this type of project that I've been involved in with Full Circle. These are very competitive funds that they seek, and this is a quality project. It serves a population that needs housing the most. Full Circle first presented this project to the Community Development Committee in February of 2016. And since then has met with city staff, received funding as stated for a 25-unit project. excuse me. Originally, the project was 47 dwelling units. However, because of the funding change or how the funding was structured, it had to be scaled back, but the project type was not changed. But the maximum number of units is 25 units for this building, with the option of building a second building. However, that building is not funded at all at this time. Full Circle, I think it's their goal, would like to continue to apply for funding to construct a second building to kind of reach that goal of 47 or kind of mirror this building in the future if that happens. The city has a core downtown sub-area plan. It identifies a lack of affordable rental housing as a threat to long-term success excuse me, of the city. In the plan's future land use map, it goes on to designate the land at Richmond and Pearl as attached residential, fulfilling the goal to bring people back to the downtown. So we need people downtown. Additionally, the city's comprehensive plan highlights the objective to improve high-density multifamily zoning in the downtown center of the city where sufficient services exist, with the goal to promote responsible growth while providing high quality of life to residents. And then there's some other objectives that, you know, I won't, you can certainly get a copy of the staff report. I won't get into in greater detail at this time. So the proposed building would be constructed on the eastern half of the property. The site consists of numerous parcels at this time, meets and bounds as they're called, and there's a 25-foot wide public alley or right-of-way that lies directly to the north of the site. You know, currently this is used by a couple properties to the north, and the applicant is proposing to rezone the entire site to RM2 high-density multifamily and obtain a front yard building setback. Because they're dividing the property in half, the front yard building setback is the smaller of the two frontages, that being Pearl Street. So the building will be closer to Pearl Street. So instead of 30 feet, it'll be 15. It'll still meet the setback to the rear, to the side, and all the other setbacks. But because they're dividing it that way, that's the reason for that setback. Also from the off-street parking, as I had stated, from 51 spaces to 33 spaces. Typically, if this was a typical multifamily apartment project, parking spaces are based on bedroom size, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 2 or more, and spaces are calculated based on that. Or if it's a assisted or independent living, there may be a half space per unit. I think Full Circle has empirical data, and their their traffic analysis has shown that their parking is and traffic is 30% less than that of a typical multifamily development. So the parking is not a concern of staff as far as the variance being requested. The applicant, as I stated, wants to divide the lot into two pieces of land. The subdivision is just to create 2 lots, and this building would be on one of them. I think one of the primary reasons for that is for funding. You know, they can build a building, and then if they want to pursue funding for a second building, they could do that in the future. This approval tonight does not approve 2 buildings. They would have to come back. The variance for the parking does only apply for this building. There would have to be another public hearing. But we wanted to make it clear that if there was, it's their intent to try to get another building, because there's a great need for this type of housing, but this is only for 1 building at this time. You know, the petitioner, quite honestly, it was staff suggestion that they use the existing right-of-way to the north. They don't need to use that right-of-way. So that existing right-of-way is 25 feet wide. It's a driveway. It's essentially like a street, but it's a public street, or a public driveway, basically. But what it does is It allows them to provide additional landscaping for the properties to the north. They have also agreed to pave that if it is vacated, and that is considered by the city council. So vacation is a public hearing at the city council level. And that would be proposed at the city council level. So the properties that use that now would still be able to use it. They would have access to use it in perpetuity. That would be recorded on the plat of subdivision against those properties. So if those homes were sold, any future owner would know that. And Full Circle has also agreed to maintain that driveway in perpetuity, and that also would be recorded, so they would know that. And they would also provide additional landscaping. Full Circle would not use that access or alley if it is vacated for this site or their development. The only use for their site would be for emergency access. So if the only access they're proposing for their site is off of Pearl Street, about 150 feet, I believe, east of Richmond and Pearl. And if need be, and there was an emergency, that would be the only reason. And that would be also recorded on the plat of subdivision. So there would be no cross access as well. So all that would be recorded against the property. But again, that would be considered by the council. If the city council, these easements would be recorded. Tonight's request is for the map amendment, the variances, and for the subdivision of lands. Staff supports the rezoning to RM2. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It designates the site as medium density residential. As I stated, the core downtown sub-area plan adopted by the council in 2009 states the property should be redeveloped as residential. However, a lot of stuff has happened since then. The road's 5 lanes, so single family doesn't make sense. It's an area of transition. This project has gone through many different types of uses. It's a tough site. This seems to be a good fit. It's downtown. It's along a major roadway. It lies in the middle of a neighborhood that's established. And working with Full Circle, they have done everything as a staff that we have asked them to do for this project. We said, could you make sure you meet with the residents? Could you make sure that you provide additional landscaping? Make the building, try to fit in with the neighborhood, be sensitive to that. Because we had all the history. I've been here the whole time that a lot of these different developments have been proposed. And many of them were decent developments, and for one reason or another, they didn't happen. This development seems to be a great fit for that site. The variances, as I stated, for the parking and the setback, and then the final plat. Staff's recommendation at this time is approval of the zoning map amendment from R4 and C4 to RM2. That recommendation has to satisfy criteria in our zoning ordinance that's listed under a table in our zoning ordinance, which is table 33. Staff finds that criteria in that table have been satisfied. The variances for the parking from 51 spaces to 33, and the front yard building setback for this building from 30 feet to 15 feet. Staff is recommending approval of that with the conditions that the site be developed in accordance with the plan basically that you see. So in accordance with that plan, with the conditions that are included in the staff report. A couple of the conditions that are not yet totally worked out are the PACE transit shelter. I can't speak for PACE. Also, we're trying to, if there is a shelter and there is paratransit service, we want to make sure residents don't have to wait outside or in the heat, so we want to make sure that's addressed. So, but the rest of the conditions, Full Circle has fully agreed to, and staff finds that the requirements of table 32 of the zoning ordinance for variances have been met. The preliminary and final plats of subdivision are another ordinance that the city has. It's a subdivision control and development ordinance. And that just is merely dividing the property into 2 lots. And staff's recommending approval with the conditions that the property meet the recommendations of the city engineers. So they have to provide stormwater detention. If the alley is vacated by the city council, there's a condition that they have to provide a 24-foot paved driveway to residents currently utilizing the alley. The access easement, as I stated, perpetuity, maintain the alley in perpetuity. This would be recorded. Only utilized for emergency access by Full Circle. The final plat shall reflect the front yard setback of 30 feet for lot 1, which is the lot to the west, which currently shows 15. Full Circle, this would move forward to the city council if recommended. So this tonight is the planning zone is a recommending body. So whatever they recommend, they can recommend approval, they can recommend, on the zoning map amendment, they can recommend approval or denial. On the variance, they can recommend approval, they can recommend denial, or they can recommend approval with conditions. On the preliminary and final plats, they can recommend approval, they can recommend denial, or they can recommend approval with conditions. Regardless of any of those recommendations, it will move forward to the city council, who will have the final decision. And at that time, the plat of vacation, assuming, positive recommendation would be considered, most likely, September 18th, and that meeting would be at 7 p.m. here. Just bear with me 1 second. We did receive a correspondence after the packet went out, public correspondence from Clearbrook. I just want to read it to the record real quickly for the public benefit. I did give a copy to planning and zoning and to the applicants, stated August 31st, 2017, to the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission. Pearl Street Commons, McHenry, Illinois. Dear members and aldermen, Clearbrook began in the mid-50s as a vision of a group of Northwest suburban Chicagoland parents in response to the unmet educational needs of their children with special needs. What started as a small school in the barn of a Rolling Meadows church grew initially in response to the needs of the children, first served by Clearbrook as they aged. Vocational services, employment services, and residential services were developed. Today, adult services include an array of community-based residential options, day program services that include options for individuals with autism, aging adults with developmental disabilities, employment training and placement services, and a full complement of clinical services. Clearbrook serves over 8,000 children and adults with intellectual developmental disabilities in over 160 communities throughout Chicago and the suburbs. Nearly 24,000 persons with disabilities live in McHenry County, according to the census, with over 2,200 calling the city of McHenry home, 8.35%. There are very few affordable and accessible housing options in the area, and even fewer that include supportive services. Full Circle's proposed projects will help meet the need for housing that is affordable and accessible for someone with a disability. Partnership with TLS veterans and Over the Rainbow, OTR, to provide services to the residents will make this an asset to the community. We know that a housing development such as this would greatly benefit our clients and help them live more independently. Clearbrook supports this project, believes this development will serve persons with a disability in the community, and will continue to work with Full Circle to make this project a reality. Sincerely, Anthony D. Vittorio, President. Thank you for bearing with me with that, and with that I'll answer any questions we have.
Thank you, Doug. At this time, I'd like to open questions and concerns to the commissioners.
Why this area?
Sorry?
Why this particular area? Why this piece of property?
Sure. So we were very excited to find an available parcel so close to the downtown of McHenry. When we're working on a development and working to identify a site, one of the things that we keep in mind that's so very important is access to transportation, close integration with the rest of the community, making sure we're not building, on the fringes where things aren't walkable. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to potentially build on such a walkable site, so proximate to downtown McHenry, where tenants can, just find their way right downtown to any amenity that they would be looking for. So that was, the primary driver of considering this site.
So that's typically something that you would be looking for, regardless of what city we're building, and
Yes,
walkable services for the.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I know in your handout you mentioned Naples, Florida and Chicago. You've got developments, you also have one up in Richmond, correct?
Yes.
What's the occupancy rate on these developments?
Across our entire 855 unit portfolio, we're at 98% occupied.
Okay. Mainly veterans, mainly handicapped, challenged people,
Sure, that's a good
Do you have a
question.
breakup?
So each of our developments, there's no cookie cutter for us. We're looking to fit in with whatever community our project is located. So in Richmond, for example, that's 25 units of housing for seniors 55 and older, but we do have some veterans on site there. Similar to our property in Naples, Florida, that one is also for seniors 62 and older. But we found we have a large preponderance of veterans living on the site. We also have a 32 unit development on the north side of the city of Chicago, where Over the Rainbow is our partner on that one too. So that's this is time 2 working with Over the Rainbow. So that development was specifically designed for persons with disabilities. So that's kind of where we've really put our knowledge of building accessible housing to the test, and Cordigan Clark was the architect on that development. So we are able to implement a lot of of the research and experience that went into that development on this one as well.
Okay, have you done any pre-screening or asking for residents so far?
So we already have an interest list of 20 people that have just, from reading the news articles or hearing about the development, called our office asking to, just have their name down to make information available to them if the project moves forward and, at that time.
So you're 80% booked already, so. Okay.
Of these 25 units, do you know right now how many would be one bedroom and how many would be?
Yeah, of the 25, 22 of them are one bedroom and 3 of them are 2 bedroom.
Okay.
This is a 3-story building?
Correct.
Can you explain it?
hear back here.
Why don't you just adjust the mic a little bit, push it up a little, yeah, there you go.
Is that better?
So it's a 3-story building
Yes.
In a residential area, single-family homes. Can you explain how this will not alter the character of that neighborhood?
Sure, so that's a good question. We really view this site as a transitional area between single-family homes and a commercial district on the other side. So the height of the building that we're proposing it's below the height requirement even of the single-family home district. So even if the zoning for the single-family home half of the site remained in place, someone could, as of right, come and build a building taller than what we're proposing here. So we're conforming to the height requirements of any of the adjacent zoning districts.
Well, those are the requirements, but the character of the neighborhood.
Sure, so I guess another thing to keep in mind is we've looked very closely at the height of the surrounding buildings. Our building is approximately the same height as the bank, that's right across the street. The church and school that are just on the other side of Richmond, are not one-story, single-family residences either, so we think, you know, the height of our building is contextual, given the mixed-use surrounding area.
And then as far as other design considerations, we have a pitched roof, so that's more similar with the surrounding area. And then as far as colors of the building, we've taken like the brick, the red brick, and then the white hardy board, the white and blue. That's also, you know, we try to take those design considerations from, or cues from the community as well.
On your drawing with all the air conditioning units and the foliage, you have to hide the view. What's on the other side?
I'm not sure, I'm not sure I understand what your question is. What's on the other side of?
The bush line, the property.
On the east side?
Yes, on the east side.
Oh, that's enough. There's a
single family home.
Single family home.
So I'd also just like to add to that, we're going sort of above and beyond we're obviously complying with the landscaping requirements, but we're also opting to build a fence there on that property line, which is not required, but something we feel is a good step to take for added buffer.
Any questions, Mr. Sabota? Ms. Miller?
So Jordan, as project manager, given the print and the preliminary that we've been provided, do you see any huge obstacles in your way of getting this project from start to finish if approved?
No, zoning and the building permit are kind of our last hurdles. We have our financing approvals, and we have our team together, our architect, our engineer, our service partners. So no, I don't see any impediment.
Have you had any difficulties in the past with your other buildings that you've constructed for them?
Through the construction process?
Yes.
No, they've all been like on time or right around there. And
so what we
completed
see here
successfully.
tonight is what we can expect 11 months from now.
Yes, exactly. You know, we not only in developments where we have a lot of different funding sources coming together like this one, not only do we have you as the municipality and the power of the, you know, building permit, and then ultimately providing a certificate of occupancy to ensure that what we build complies with what was approved, but we also have our financing partners making sure that those, you know, that we're complying as well. So the veterans piece, the persons with disabilities piece, the accessibility features in the building, the green features of the building, those are all things that our financing sources are requiring as well. So those are recorded into the mortgage documents associated with the financing. So, you know, there are additional guarantees that what we're proposing on paper is certainly what we intend to build.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see additional questions from the commissioners. Here's where the,
Excuse me, I just had one.
Mr. Thacker, have the
Very quickly, I was at your open house over at St. Mary's, and in regards to the parking spaces, you indicated at that open house that very few of your residents drive, that they don't have automobiles. Is that correct?
Yeah, we find, you know, not only we look across our portfolio at what we see on the ground, and then also in consultation with Over the Rainbow and TLS. What we find between our development, our Milwaukee Avenue apartments designed for persons with disabilities, we have 14 spaces there for 32 units. Different context, it's in the city of Chicago. But there, we're only utilizing at any given time about 5 or 6 of those parking spaces. Our Goodlet Arms development in Naples, Florida, which is maybe on the other extreme, not as pedestrian-oriented, more auto-oriented than the site proposed here in McHenry. That's 250 units. We have 120 parking spaces on site, and at any given time, only about 58 of them are utilized. So when we look at parking utilization across our portfolio, and then also take into account, Over the Rainbow develops some housing of their own too, and so in consultation with that, that's how we've arrived at the ask we're making today.
Okay, thank you.
Here's where the fun begins. So I'm going to start announcing names for the public portion of the meeting. I would ask that if you've signed in to speak and the person in front of you said the exact same thing that you'd come to the podium to say, would you please refrain from making that comment so we can try to get as many people in and out of this room this evening. That would be fantastic. Thank you in advance. So at this point, I would like to open the public portion of the meeting, and I will start reading names here momentarily. And I'm also going to apologize in advance. I am sure I'm going to screw up a few of those names, so please bear with us tonight. Pardon? No, I'm not for this one. So, Laura France, you're first on the list. Laura was sworn in as we swore in the people at the table here from the petitioner. She was part of that swearing in, so I believe I can make you exempt from this time. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a little bit of additional information about where TLS Veterans fits in with this partnership. Part of the mission of our agency is making sure that veterans are housed and stay housed and that they're happy in their housing. And with this particular project, there's two different ways that we may become involved. Full Circle may themselves get veteran referrals, and while the veteran is residing with them, the veteran may decide that they would like a hand up in our support and they call us. Or the many veterans that we work with may decide that this seems like an appropriate housing opportunity for them, and we refer to Full Circle. There's a very rigorous selection process, background checks, credit checks, et cetera. So the veterans that are admitted to living there, if they also would like a hand up, we will be available for them. And our veteran services are the whole range: food, furniture, veteran peer-to-peer support, counseling if they'd like it, whatever it may be, transportation at times, et cetera. Again, with the goal of helping them maintain housing that is satisfying to them.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Tom McCormick. Each one of you that I call to the podium, we will have to swear you in. So please, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tom McCormick. I live at 1111 South Pontiac Avenue in McHenry, Illinois. And I'm also a VFW member, as are many of the people in the room. And Jordan was nice enough to come out to the VFW for our meeting in August. And he made a presentation to all the veterans. They were very similar to what you have in front there with the illustration. And it was extremely well received. The commander of the post and all the post officers, I'm a board member at the post, are very in favor of this project. The only thing we're disappointed in is that there's not enough units for veterans. We'd like to see more, but we're happy that they're included in this project. And I think we have some people in the room that would be candidates for that. There's one disabled veteran in the room with us tonight. He's on a fixed income, excuse me. He's currently living in a second floor apartment with getting up and down the stairs. And there's many of other those in our community. They're also on disability, so they don't have high incomes. But the VFW actively supports this project, and we're behind it 100%.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Steve and Nancy.
No Steve.
No Steve, just Nancy tonight. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Nancy Henningfield, representing First Midwest Bank, 1308 North Richmond Road, McHenry, 60050.
Thank you.
I came today, I got to meet Full Circle as well as I've known TLS veterans. I got to know a little bit more about Over the Rainbow. And we as First Midwest truly want to help our community. We know that there are folks that need the housing. We see that the city has done their due diligence and checking things out, and Full Circle as well, and providing that. First Midwest, as well as other institutions, financial institutions, are always looking for ways to help those with financial workshops or whatever it may be. So we are here to say that we have supported these things in our communities before, and we're happy to see that all of this due diligence is happening. So thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Johnson. Andrew, we swore you in the interim, did we not?
Yes, you did.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm the civil engineer on the project. I don't have much to say. If you have any questions related to the civil engineering on the project, we are here for those,
Great.
to answer those questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Jane Gregory? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Excuse me. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Jane Gregory, and I'm representing Senior Services of McHenry at 3519 North Richmond Road in McHenry, 60051. Senior Services promotes doing everything possible to keep residents in their own homes. Sometimes there needs to be other options to preserve residents' independence, which we see Full Circle communities doing and ensuring when we can't keep those residents in their homes. So we work in Richmond at Creek View, where together we provide social experiences, we promote the residents' mental and physical well-being, and help them protect their rights and dignity so they can enjoy their lives and feel part of the community. So we fully recommend improving our community and working with Full Circle to do so.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carol Kuhn. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Twice in a row. I'm going to do this all night long. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Carol Cooney, 1313 North Richmond Road, McHenry, Illinois.
Great, thank you.
I just have some questions. May I ask the questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. My main concern, is this going to be for our local veterans and also people with disabilities, and veterans not coming in from Lake County, Cook County, that type of thing?
I'll let the petitioner answer that question.
Sure. So it's not legal to restrict residency in a building to a certain municipality, but the reason why McHenry was so appealing to us is because there are so many veterans and persons with disabilities and great organizations to refer local people to the building. So based on the organizations that we're working with and our plans to market the building locally, we don't think there'll be no need to really market this thing far and wide. We're already getting interest before it's even approved. So our goal is to serve local residents and work with as many local organizations as possible to take tenant referrals in that way. And if there are, new people moving in, maybe they're wanting to move closer to a relative who lives in McHenry, or, have always wanted to live here, they'll just become a new McHenry resident, and we'll do what we can with our service provider partners to make sure that they are comfortable in their new home.
And just to add on that, Carol, I was also at the St. Mary's presentation that they had, and I do believe, and Lindsay can verify, it is a first come, first serve. The applications that come in is how that, so as local people hear about this project and apply, as they start to approve those people, it is a first come, first serve, so.
So possibly we would have more people from the outside than we would have from the inside.
Well, I think what Lindsay said earlier is that she already has 20 people on a waiting list to get information if this project's approved. I'm going to guess that's come from the local advertising that's happened already, the Herald articles, this meeting, the things that have already happened locally in our community is my guess.
Yeah, just another thing I'd add practically is if you look at Creekview, the development we mentioned in Richmond, I would say when we look at where our tenants that have moved into that building have come from, it's been from Richmond, either really close or family members of other people who live in Richmond that are wanting to live closer to their family or their kids or a brother or sister.
Thank you. There was mention of a shelter possible on the outside for picking up the tenants and that. When I was up in Richmond, I noticed that you have a large entrance before you actually get into the building. Would a shelter be necessary if you have a area that people could wait for a bus to be picked up? Would a shelter be necessary?
So, so I guess two different things. One, the bus shelter proposal would be available to more than just our residents. It would, I believe, the city would see that as a community benefit. And that would be for the Pace line, whereas some tenants that would be taking advantage of paratransit or MC ride services could wait in the building, and the van, that would be a van, not a bus, and that would pull into the parking lot and could pick people up kind of more on demand.
Yeah, so the fixed route is 806, 807, and those are the buses that stop at the shelters. And Pace actually paid for all of the shelter replacements in the city. So those are the ones you see at the former City Hall site, go on an Elm, and they have advertising on them. And actually, the city gets a portion of that advertising, but there's no cost to the city. Then there's the paratransit, which is the curb-to-curb service, which is the smaller on-demand, which goes right to, where they're called to. So they would not go to the shelter. They would go to right outside and wait for the person. They don't go inside, but they would wait, like in the parking lot, say.
So these would be for people that don't live there. These would be for, I don't know how to describe this.
Carol, so this would be an additional bus, just like in front of the old City Hall here now, we have
So for students and
for anyone to ride along with those residents as well.
It's two different types of services.
Oh, okay. Thank you. As far as what we refer to as the alley, but it is a street, and that on that north end, you said that the only reason it would be used would be just for emergencies as far as ambulances and that type of thing. Is there any curbing that's going to be going along that north end, or is it going to be bushes and trees, that type of thing? How would you get vehicles coming in from the north end or going out there instead of coming in on Pearl Street and going back out on Pearl Street?
Well, so it would, right now, it would essentially be used the same as it is now, except paved like a driveway. So they could just pull in off of Richmond, and it doesn't be curbed. It's not gonna be a public street.
No, but they'd be going over grass and that type of thing, because there wouldn't be a driveway going out onto that.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. The alley wouldn't be connected to our parking lot. It would just serve the two owners that currently use it.
Okay, but when they said they would be crossing over in case of emergencies, I just didn't know how that was gonna be handled, because I'm sure there's gonna be emergencies.
They could drive over the curb, and the parking lot would be directly adjacent if they had to, in an emergency.
And you said that you have brought down the variance of 30 feet down to 15 feet. That 15 feet on the south end, how close is that building? Is that 15 feet going to be from the inside of the present sidewalk and parkway? Or is it going to be, include that 15 feet from the street into the parking lot at the end of the building?
So if you look at that drawing right there, the property line and the right-of-way line is the same thing. So the sidewalk is not on the property.
Right.
So
That's city sidewalk.
Yes, so it's 15 feet in addition to that.
On the inside of
Yes.
the sidewalk inside?
Yes, at least, yes.
I know that this first building is going to house 25 units, is that correct? And you were looking for a maximum of 40 some odd buildings? I don't know how many units we're gonna end up having once you build the second building. I've heard of 60 units, I've heard of 51, I've heard of 33. I'm trying to find out a number that is going to be final once the 2 buildings are up and they're 3 stories tall.
Yeah, so this current one is 25 units, and the second one would not be any larger than 25 units.
So it will be a
total
maximum of 50 units.
Right, correct.
I'm a little interested in the parking. I know you say that a lot of veterans with handicaps aren't able to drive, but there are a lot of veterans, fortunately, that can drive because of cars being handicap accessible in that. And I'm thinking that maybe there'll be more cars than you anticipate. And when they're there and they're having visitors, have you allotted all to completed
50 total parking spots.
So 1 for each unit?
Correct, and 4 of them will be handicap accessible.
4? Only 4 of them will be?
The handicap ones are mandated by the Illinois Accessibility Code. And that's mandated by the number of required street spaces.
Yeah, so I can just add to that a little bit. We like to, with obviously comply with. What we also do is allow reasonable accommodation requests. So obviously we'll have more people with a desire and physical need to park closer to the door. And this gives us flexibility to just offer assigned parking for people that come, make the request or the reasonable accommodation request to the manager. It provides us with a lot of flexibility instead of, having to have double the amount of paved space, which I think is, 1, not attractive, and 2, doesn't provide us with flexibility that we see work very successful in senior buildings and similar developments.
And while they are requesting a variance from the parking, in the multifamily requirement, there is 0.25 of that requirement is built in for visitor parking. So it's a variance, but that is built into that requirement as well.
Lindsay, can you just reiterate your average open spots at your other facilities?
Yeah, so the 2 examples that I gave within our portfolio, for 32 units at our 1 development geared towards persons with disabilities, we see about 5 or 6 of those parking spaces utilized, and that is including the property manager and care attendants that are coming in and out. That's just when we go out there and just take a point-in-time count almost and average it. And in Naples, Florida, our 250 units, we have 120 spaces. We see about 58 to 60 of those utilized at any given time. And so I think it is important. I think 1-to-1, we're proposing better than 1-to-1 at this current moment. We'll have to come back to you for phase 2. So if you're seeing as a municipality that our 25 units are using all 33 of those spots, then we'll obviously have to reconsider, and you probably wouldn't approve a parking variance for phase 2 if you are seeing that it's not working out for phase 1. So we have more than 1 parking spot per bedroom in the building. So we truly feel, based on our research and our other buildings that we are adequately parked.
That's all. Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet, thank you. Sherry Sullivan.
Hi.
I'm gonna slow down now so I don't screw it up this time, Sherry. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Sherry Sullivan, 8908 Burton Road, Wonder Lake, Illinois, 60097.
Thank you.
I initially went to the St. Mary's meeting because I have a special needs son. He's mentally challenged, and I was hoping that maybe, by any chance, small chance, that he could actually have a home other than living with me. I'm getting up in age. I have no place for him to go. So this was a main concern of mine. I was hoping that this would fit. Obviously, it doesn't. He needs 24-hour care and whatever else. So it didn't work out for him, but as I listened to the residents and stuff speak, it just sparked something in me, because when I was a teenager, I used to see this man walking through snow, through rain, through everything, and as soon as I got my driver's license, I said, stop, can I give you a ride? Where are you going? I'm going to brake parts, I work there. I'm like, let me give you a ride. It's too cold, it's too this, it's too that. He got to know me. I started taking him out to lunch every Tuesday to Windhill, and I lived in McHenry at that time too. So we got to be good friends, and I found out he was a veteran. He lived in the same apartment building, Cooney Heights, behind Convenient on 31, and he was just always walking everywhere he went because he lived in town. It was the only place he could afford. When I went into his apartment after knowing him 15 years, to take some groceries up for him because it was getting harder and harder for him to go up the stairs, I noticed that his carpet was still shag lime colored green. And I was just appalled. Well then, as he got a little bit older and time wore on, he couldn't make it up the stairs anymore. So the only place that he could move to, that he could afford, was to go for the veterans down in Mattoon, I believe, Illinois, about 3.5 hours away. He lived here all his life. Once he moved, I would go visit him maybe once a month, just to catch up. And I saw him slowly decline, because he walked everywhere in this town. He walked to the show, he walked to the store, he carried his groceries, he did everything. So having this in the heart of McHenry, I think, is the greatest thing in the world. And I think about this man often. His name was Frank Oken. And he served his time, and he was treated poorly in my eyes. That he should have to work all his life and make a small pittance of money to live in an apartment that still had shag green carpet. So with that being said, I know that this is really important for McHenry, especially since all the buildings are becoming vacant. People are moving out of the town and moving towards Johnsburg and out towards the northern end, towards Crystal Lake. We got to do something in McHenry to make it more viable again, because as I remember it growing up, it was a really fun place to live, and it was nice. It was community. And they say it's the heart of the fox. Let's have some heart. Show these people, show our veterans some respect for the job that they did for ourselves, for our flag, for our country. I think it's the best thing in the world. So with that being said, I just needed to have to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim McCain. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Steve, please state your name and address for the record.
Tim McCann, 3507 Broad Street, McHenry, Illinois, 60050.
Thanks, sir. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me. Jason, property owner. I live just directly north of the property. I just have a couple questions about it. I think it's a great idea. I just think it's kind of in the wrong form a little bit. So you said it's the same height as all the property, this is what's required. What is the top height of the property, the roof line?
38 feet, 10 inches to To the very top of the ridge.
Of the road?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the setback of the property to the east? The craftsman style, single.
25 feet.
And you're gonna be 10 feet in front of him towards the road with your 15-foot setback on that Pearl Street.
Approximately, yes.
Okay. It was mentioned that the bank is the same height, the church, of course, is super high, the school across the street. Your building is gonna be 15 feet from this guy's house? 30 feet? With setbacks, his side setback yard, your side setback yard? I'm just asking, I don't know. The bank is across the street, across this vacant property right now. The church is across now a 5-lane highway, so it's not 20 feet away. So I just think it's a little bit wrong for the area. I live in the 90-something-year-old bungalow, 1-story craftsman bungalow. Right now I can sit in my backyard, 20 feet from my door, look out over my 6-foot privacy fence and see the top of the driveway, or the drive-through across the street to the bank. Now I will see 20-some, 30-some feet of building above me, 20 feet away from my property. So another question is there a density requirement for RS4 or whatever we're going to here?
Density requirement for RS4.
The density is based on the land area per the unit size.
Right. Proposed, the district is primarily intended to provide a flexible manner for numbers of sizes of dwellings that will be produced approximately population up to 31 persons per acre. So we're taking a 1.4 acre property, splitting it in half to 0.7 acres and putting 25 people plus a attendant on that property.
Yeah, that's not, that's in the
In the ordinance.
Yeah, that's in the ordinance. That's in the ordinance, but that's not that's a hard and fast rule.
Okay.
That's, this is a different type of project.
It's an RM2 high density multifamily residential district.
Correct, but this is so is a independent living, an assisted living, higher density projects. They have different impacts, different land use impacts, different traffic impacts. So, I mean, what I guess which impact are you looking at? You're looking at traffic. You're looking at
Up to 31 persons per acre.
Right. That's a general guideline. Yes.
So in an R1, you could have up to 50 people per acre.
They meet the RM2. They meet the RM2 zoning. They're not asking for. They meet the RM2. If it's rezoned to RM2, what you're referring to is a description of that district. They meet the RM2 requirement in the zoning ordinance. I understand what you're referencing. It describes that they meet the land area per dwelling unit. But I understand what you're referencing. Yeah.
So, and then it's currently zoned what, RS2?
RS4 and C4.
RS4. So could I take a property, 80 acres in McHenry today and build an RS4 subdivision?
If it came before the Planning and Zoning Commission,
Right.
got it approved.
So again, the RS4 is a special zoning for the downtown area because it's old development. I got a 90-year-old home. There's several homes that are around there. It's been redeveloped a few times. Again, the description that is in the zoning ordinance says it's a unique classification of housing.
RS4 is for 5,000 square foot city lots. C4 is the downtown district zoning, of which half this property is zoned, the eastern half, which has
Right.
no setback requirements. So
Right.
you could build up to the property line, and that is governed, there's no height requirement there, it's a 1.0 FAR. So on the east half of this property, that's governed by FAR. So the area, floor area to floor area over of the inside of the building to the lot area. The west half is 5,000 square foot lot size.
So I guess my comment kinda is, why not build out instead of up? And then it's not to you, but I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, if you truly wanna fit into the area, why not build out, give them all the variances that way, instead of saying, let's go up. I mean, this guy's gonna come out, he's 15 feet away, he's gonna go out to his dogs, there's gonna be a 6-foot property fence, a couple trees that will grow up in 30 years, and 40 feet of building next to him. He's now in an alley.
I mean, this is my objective, honest answer. This is a tough site.
It is a tough
This is a
site.
very tough site to redevelop. The 38 feet, and you said that's the top?
Yes.
We don't, okay, for any structure, we don't
Right.
measure height to the top. We measure to the median level. That's for a house. So in RM2, you can go up to 40 feet.
Right.
And that's not measured at the top, that's measured at the midpoint.
Okay.
So the top, that 38 could go to, that could even go to 45. So, you know, so it's an infill site. So, you know, to build out, it's not practical economically, and it's close to downtown. It's for this type of project, it provides a need for housing. They provide, these people, most people here are not gonna be able to drive. So they
Right,
need to
that's
walk
right,
to
yeah.
services. It's on a transit route, a PACE route. They can use the paratransit service. So these projects are scored very competitively. I dealt with several of them. And you know, and that's the honest answer. It's just a tough site. And this is an ideal use for this site. And I looked at all the buildings, even the houses in the surrounding area. I mean, the house to the north, I mean, the garage right on Richmond Road and the house on Richmond Road. I mean, that's 35 plus feet high, if you look at that. Directly,
The white one on?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think this really is that out of whack with what's there. That's my objective answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Saladin. Checking with counsel, sir. Just wanted to make sure I needed to swear.
Swear a lawyer, that's fine.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Mark Saladin. My business address is 40 Brink Street in Crystal Lake, Illinois. The reason I'm here tonight is I serve on the TLS board. I'm one of the directors, and I do want to emphasize the excellent programs that TLS does to support its veterans. And I think it's important that you have an organization that does its mission well and tries to help the veterans that are in need. And there are many of them that have needs. So I did want to say that on behalf of TLS. But many of you also know that I've sat at this table many a times in this chamber supporting projects that we've come, because I am a development attorney and I do a lot of zoning work. I've actually sat at this table on this site with other projects that have come before you that actually have been turned down. In my experience as a zoning attorney, you do have a site that is somewhat difficult only because you have the residential homes adjacent to the north. So you have to look at this site as a transitional site, and there's no question about that. When I look at this area, because of Route 31 and the 5-lane cross-section that's there, because of Pearl Street and because of the bank properties, because of the church and the school that are across to the west, I see this as more of a commercial area that would support this type of a project. And that's with all due respect to the neighbor who just spoke, who has been sitting viewing through a vacant lot at the present time. But a city also has to look at the needs that go beyond just that issue. And those needs, and I think a city has a duty to look at the needs of serving the disabled and serving veterans. And I think those are two important points. Now, this level, you may need to look at more of the technical requirements of do they meet the requirements of our ordinance, no question about that. The city council, because I also sit on the city council in Woodstock, I know you have to make those policy decisions that weigh the cost of having a 3-story building in this location versus the needs of the public that you're serving. And I think in this case that it's clear that those needs are greater to be served with this type of a use at this location. So I do appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Pam Goff?
You said it right. Good for you.
I'll try to not botch any more of them up tonight. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Pam Goff, 3615 West Front Avenue in McHenry, Illinois. And this is a question for you, because I've asked it, and nobody has either A, gotten back to me, or B, been able to answer it for me. Because of where I live, we get, after any rainfall, and because the city just put a flushing hydrant in on Maple Avenue, we collect 10 acres of drainage. So, in light of Hurricane Harvey and what we just witnessed down there, we start putting in blacktop, more hard surface, impermeable to moisture getting into the ground. Where is that water and snow when it's plowed off the parking lots? Where is it going to enter the city's drainage system, and where does it drain to? Because nobody's been able to tell me that or show me that, and I have asked. And yes, I'm very adamant in this.
Ted, should I step up?
You can step up to the mic if you'd like. Yes, you've already been sworn in. So sure, why don't you step up to the table there if you would.
The existing site currently drains the existing site currently drains to 4 dry wells contained within the asphalt parking lot. Our proposed site will be proposing that the site drains to the permeable paver system shown on the drawing over here in the center aisle, and the water is proposed to take advantage of the highly infiltratable soils. We performed percolation tests to measure the infiltration rate of the soils to guarantee that the water will be able to infiltrate.
Okay, see, you didn't quite get the question. When that water, and it's got to go somewhere, where does it enter the storm sewer system? And where does it go from there?
We are not proposing any connection to the McHenry storm sewer system.
It's got to go someplace.
The water's going to infiltrate into the ground.
How can you guarantee that?
We've performed percolation tests, and we're working with the city of McHenry's engineering consultant, HR Green, to meet the local standards.
Can you refer him to me or me to him tomorrow?
Yeah.
Mr. Schaefer, can I get in touch with Mr. Person from HR Green to talk to him about that? Because I am extremely concerned about that.
I'm not in, believe me, I'm not an engineer.
Deluged with water from the fire department parking lot, from the neighbor who put up a home about 10 years ago from us, from Church Street, from the storm sewer, that if I don't keep that open, boy, I'm in mid-calf water in my driveway. And my garden just...
So as part of the subdivision process, that they have to go through engineering, full engineering. And before they go to city council, the I's and the T's all have to be dotted and crossed. So they have to submit, so in answer to your question, they have to submit full calculations and run a computer model of calculations of where all the water's gonna go. If it's gonna go in the ground, how much water, and then eventually where it's gonna end up. If you wanna go, and I'd be happy to refer you to our engineer and put you in touch with this gentleman, and they can sit down and kind of go through that with you in that technical analysis, but they gotta go through all that analysis as far, and that's a function of the soil, of the topography and all that, so, and the storm and where that's located.
And the fact that the impervious surface that they are installing is actually not impervious. They're using impervious paver so that it can actually absorb the water. So instead of just being a parking lot, if you will, that doesn't take any of that water, they've designed this with that in it.
which we actually, I don't believe we have any in the city.
So that is a new technology that started to be done, and Full Circle is actually proposing that in their plan today so that they don't have a water runoff issue.
But that doesn't mean they don't have to meet the stormwater
Right.
ordinance.
I would like to still see it.
Sure.
And second of all, traffic, whether it's 1 car, 5 cars, whatever. Because of where we live, people love to come down Grand, zip down Church, up Friend, and back out onto 120, missing 2 traffic lights. So any traffic, additional traffic impact from this proposed development
They,
could impact us. They already do it. I mean, we call the police, they come sit, and of course nobody does it. The minute the police leave, then we have like 40 cars coming, looking down there, school buses included, to miss 2 lights. And they do it. So I'm just saying, just let's be real careful here when we talk about veterans and handicapped, disabled, not being able to drive, because I have a handicapped brother who is able to drive. So to say they don't drive is totally misleading. They
Can
do.
I interrupt for a second, please? You know,
hang on.
No, let me interrupt.
I just want to say for the record,
Okay.
that there was a traffic study done.
Okay.
And then that's what I was gonna say, because we don't take for granted that nobody drives.
Okay.
And, you know, I've got the numbers here, again, I can show you the traffic report. You know, when they look at traffic, they look at peak times. And they basically, they count cars, you know, for lack of a better thing. They look at level of service, which is basically the delay, the time you sit at an intersection. Basically, and they go from A to E, okay? So, and the main intersection there is Pearl Richmond, and then they also look at trip distribution. So where the traffic's gonna be funneled from this site. And they typically, the peak times are based on the land use. And they take that from a certified manual from traffic engineers. So that, without getting into all of that, I can certainly provide that to you, that's spelled out. The traffic impact summary is also provided in that analysis. It's very minimal. The in and out is nominal. But I would be happy to provide that to you. And it's all based on industry standards.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to
It's all
get.
good.
No, that's okay, that's
It's all
what the
good.
same thing I was gonna say. So.
Do you have any additional questions, Pam?
No, I guess not. All I can say is try living down in that area someday. And in fact, I'll have you all down there for coffee and donuts so we can all watch the cars split by.
Thank you.
But thank you for your time.
You bet. Earl Connor. I'll go slower, I promise. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name and address for the record.
Earl Connor, 3513 Broad Street, McHenry, 60050. So I've heard about the height. That was my big concern. And I think you've addressed it. I still question about 2 3-story buildings are sitting there. The magnitude of what that whole area is suddenly going to look like, nobody can vision that until that's actually happening. So I think you answered one of my questions earlier. That second building is not a guarantee. Is that correct?
It will have to come back to this commission to be approved along with city council.
And so there still can be argument and debate about that second building.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to even address that until they have funding for that.
Okay.
So at this point, we are here to approve that one single 25-unit building.
And I'll just add that our development is self-sustaining at the 25-unit size, but based on conversations with our partners and just, again, looking at the market and the immense need, we would like to do more, but the project can sustain itself as 25 units.
So with the immense need, and the city of McHenry would be proud to back up and support like a lot of these people that are here. And it seems to me we're trying to take a square peg and scram it into a round hole with variances and stuff like that, when obviously there's more than a need of just 25 units. So my question is, have you considered any other property? Because I ride by that property that's called the City Farm, right next to Meyer. Seems like to me there's your ideal location. Right across is a grocery store, right across are all the stores they need, restaurants, have 50, 60, 70 units.
You know, I'll be honest with you, I've been trying to get housing, more affordable housing constructed, the numbers just don't add up. They can get higher rents east of here with the same construction costs, and that's the honest answer, and the numbers just don't add up. And especially for housing of this type that meets such a specific population need, the funding is very competitive. So to get this type of funding, it's like, you gotta grab it. So we're trying to get people to do projects, especially in the areas close to downtown. So I appreciate the suggestion, and it's a work in progress. It's just, that's what I'm hearing. You know, the numbers don't add up.
And the flip side is, the property you spoke of isn't really for sale at this moment, but this one
It's been
is.
for sale forever.
Which one, oh, the farm just to the east.
Sits
Got
right
it.
there, right across the street
Sure.
are our apartments, so it's not changing the looks of the place.
The cow's
I
next
mean,
to
you've
mine.
got
Sure.
buses
I thought it was
right
talking about
there.
further west.
So why this little 1 acre, which you asked earlier, you know, you asked that question, and I'm just kind of curious, have you looked at other places that would really get a full city behind it type of thing going?
Yeah, so I can just say that we don't always come in with laser focus on one site. We consider all the options on the table, but at the end of the day, getting a development like this done is a combination of the competitive criteria that Doug alluded to. It's also working with a cooperative seller who is willing to operate on our timeline. The price has to be right of the land that we're seeking. The soil condition needs to be good enough to be able to build a building on top of it, you know, and there are just so many factors that play into this. And yes, we've looked at other sites in McHenry down the road and did determine that this best fit the development that we're proposing.
We had another project proposed that was bigger than this, and it was a decent project, and it just didn't get funded.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Sue Meyer. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sue Meyer. My address is 4013 Boone Creek Circle, McHenry. As most of you know, I just recently retired from serving as mayor of our community for 14 years. In addition to that, I was a special education teacher for 33 years, working with teenagers and adults transitioning from school to adult services. During those years, I've served on the board of Pioneer Center as well as Home of the Sparrow. I tell you that only because I've been through several processes where agencies are looking to move residential services into established residential neighborhoods. And it's always worthy of conversation, and I certainly understand that there are concerns. That being said, for me personally, I just think this is the most perfect location that you could have selected for this type of service and development. I think its proximity to everything in town it is so appealing. I also feel that it's the perfect transition from 120 as you head north through commercial into an established residential neighborhood and back into commercial. It's a residential development looking to locate in a residential neighborhood. And for me, I think Mr. Colmer, you know, has done everything in his power to try to find the best fit for a piece of property that's very difficult to develop. The last time that he had a proposal before you and it did not go through, I think he listened to what was being said and he heard what was being said, and I think he took the time to seek out something that would be more palatable to our community. I guess the only other thing I would like to say is Mr. Colmer has a right to develop his property, and I think that's an important fact. It's not going to remain a vacant piece of property, unfortunately, but that's progress. And this is, to me, a very good fit. I think that the other thing I would like to add is that we do call ourselves the Heart of the Fox, as was referenced before. I think that we pride ourselves on our patriotism. We've demonstrated that in many ways. I think that we pride ourselves in being a very welcoming community who take care of our own. I, for one, am very honored that you've selected McHenry as a good fit for you and that it will serve the agencies that are already here. And I would just like to say that I think that this development is going to meet the needs of who I consider to be our most distinguished citizens, our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I hope I'm not going to screw this one up poorly. Sam Tenuto. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name and address for the record.
Sam Tenuto, Pioneer Center, Dayton campus, right down the road in McHenry. Thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully my voice is projecting. It's been a long day, and I think I've been drinking decaffeinated coffee the last 4 hours, so there you go. Seriously though, Pioneer Center has connection points, full circle, on TLS, and there is here at the table tonight, there's competency, there's skill, there's attention, there's understanding that there is impact and need to those living in the apartment complex, and that there's attention and need to the surrounding community. I see diligence here tonight, and I think anything with residential requires diligence. You're talking about your homework. I see an excellent process in place. What I do see at the highest level is opportunity. McHenry is a great community. It's only really made to be a wonderful place to live by the people that serve, live, and participate in the community. So by opportunity, you serve veterans, people with disabilities, anyone, people. They will participate. They will participate in the local businesses. They will participate in the school systems, the local churches. They will give back to the community. Many of the people that I am fortunate enough to work with disabilities, veterans, they do amazing things in the community. It's an underutilized resource, and it's a shame if we don't create opportunities like this. Not a vet. Thank God for the vets and what they've done for the people in the community. Everyone says that. What I do want to share, though, is what amazes me, my friends that are vets and family members, they really ask for nothing, honestly. And I think that's a person that could ask for the world for what they've done for our country. So we, as a community, have to step up and not miss opportunities to support people in this area. I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak, and thumbs up for the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, and the last name looks like McGrath, but I apologize, I can't quite read it.
I have nothing new to add. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Jeff Knoll. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jeff Knoll, 3505 Broad Street, McHenry, Illinois, 60050.
Great, thanks.
At first, I just want to reiterate everything that we've heard, and reach out to the veterans and a shout out for all you guys have done. I really appreciate that. My grandfather served, my stepfather served, so I appreciate what you're doing, and I see the great need. But as was shared earlier, my overarching thing is it seems like we're trying to fit too much into too little. So that's kind of the standpoint where I'm coming from. Also because my home is going to be directly affected by this. So I'll start off with a couple observations and questions directed at the council. You said that all the conditions that you put forward have been met. Do you have a list of those conditions that you put forward so that we could review them?
Yeah, I'd be happy to give you a copy of the staff report.
Okay. And what criteria did you use to develop your conditions?
All the criteria are in the ordinance. Actually, and the staff report and everything is also online on the website as well.
Okay. Well, I see that you've done a lot of due diligence and like looking at the traffic impact and a lot of different things. But have you done any kind of impact for housing values or property values in the area?
I think
we provided an example. We know that obviously a home is a person's biggest investment, and when we're proposing new developments, we often have neighbors ask us if we know what the impact to their property values will be for what we're proposing. And, it's never a perfect science, but it is something we do pay attention to. So what I did submit and provide to one of the neighbors who asked me was a breakdown of MLS data from the multiple listing service that realtors use, looking at the average listing price of all of the detached single-family homes within a quarter mile of our Milwaukee Avenue Apartments development before we started construction. And as of today, with our building placed in service for 2 years, the average list price of single-family homes within a quarter mile before our development started was about $252,000, and today the average price is about $335,000. I won't say that we obviously don't know cause and effect here, but I just think it's a testament that our building certainly didn't impact things negatively in that circumstance. So I think a nicely managed, high-quality building, as opposed to a vacant lot, can be an asset to a community.
I guess the only thing I'll add is, no, there was no specific study done on this site. Generally, that question comes up a lot. And I will say, I don't know, but vacant land also has an impact, or can have an impact, because people don't know what can go there. So, and I don't know what that is. So that's something to take into consideration either way.
Yeah, because I look at it, as a neighborhood long-term, I've been there 18 years, and I'm questioning things now, and I've had realtors involved in some conversations, and the initial findings I'm getting are not positive or favorable. Maybe where you cited that was in a different urban location, or even you mentioned the Richmond location, which I'd say may be a similar building, but I would say the property and its surrounding is different. So.
Sure. And so I did just take like a non-scientific look at that too, because there's not enough MLS data available there, but I did look at the assessed values before our development started, and the assessed values just the last time the county did the assessment a few months ago, and all of the neighboring properties did increase. There were no decreases of the assessed value of any of the surrounding properties. And like you say, it's hard to take two examples and extrapolate them to the world, but we can do the best we can with the information that we have about our developments.
So I would stand to say that looking at McHenry broad-based, I would say there are other better favorable locations for a building of this size. You're going to have 28 residents with very little green space. They're each allowed to have an animal. It just seems like you're putting too much in too little of an area. And I would say, looking forward to the future for McHenry would be a revitalized downtown is always a good thing. And if you look at the other downtowns that have done that, they have plenty of municipal parking. So my suggestion would be you have a parking lot, make it a municipal parking lot, put a little fountain in it. That would be a better use for that space. It will help then draw more traffic in if you know you have an easy place to park. Tonight's Thursday night, the band concert's going on. Couldn't find a parking spot unless you start parking down on the streets and other places. The Riverwalk is planned to come on down the street from there. People would love to enjoy that. Where are they going to park? They're going to park in my front yard. That's okay. I really don't mind that. It's part of the neighborhood. I appreciate that. And the VFW, thank you. My kids grew up playing baseball in your lot. And I really appreciate the community aspect of that. So as a concerned citizen, thinking of the downtown area and the revitalization of it, I think you're missing an opportunity. If you look at the neighborhood, land like that is few and far between that could be purposed for a much better reason. No, that didn't come out quite right. For given where it's at, you don't have that opportunity, whereas there's a better opportunity elsewhere to house more in a better, more open environment. So that's the concern that I have with that. Going to the property now, it's being called a lot a veteran's home, but the criteria, there's an application process, as I understand, for people to become residents of this building. Can you describe that briefly?
Sure. So as I mentioned, Full Circle will be the developer, owner, and property manager of this development. We have a very, set in stone and rigorous process for tenant selection. So what will happen about halfway through the construction period, we will issue our formal application. It will be made available to interested parties, the 20 names I have right now, all the organizations we're working with, all the other names we get on the interest list in the meantime. The application will be available to all of them, or anyone that wants it, online and in person at different locations. All tenants will have to fill out that initial application and send it in to us. We open and look at the applications on a first come, first served basis. Our tenant screening criteria will say that we have a preference for persons with disabilities and veterans. So automatically applications where tenants indicate either of those two criteria, they'll be kicked to the top of the waiting list. Then every member of the household, so if it's a couple, if it's in a 2-bedroom, everybody in the household that is going to be on the lease has to come and do an in-person interview after that first application step. They'll have to verify, the status that they checked on their application. That's a must. And then we also do landlord references going back 5 years. We do credit and criminal background screening for each household member, and if they pass our criteria and can demonstrate that they'll be able to pay the rent and pass the landlord check, then they'll be offered to sign a lease.
Okay, so I guess the question that I have is, can you say that you can give preferential treatment to veterans in the application process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's veterans and persons with disabilities, they have to verify that as part of the process, but they get kicked to the very top of the waiting list.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, so that's good to know. And what is the proposed rent for a 1-bedroom apartment there?
The rents are, the max rents are for 1-bedroom $970 and for a 2-bedroom $1,130, and that includes utilities, and those are but the tenants living in those would not pay more than 30% of their rent, so it would be a sliding scale. So the prices that I listed are the max.
I don't know rents that well, but to me that doesn't seem like a great chasm between off-the-street rental prices and what you're offering.
Yeah, so as Jordan mentioned, that is the requirement is tenants, or units affordable to tenants making 60% of area median income or less. So that's the top end, but as Jordan alluded to, the rents are charged on a sliding scale. So a veteran that comes in that's using, disability to pay their rent, or they're paying on a sliding scale. So that's just the top end that Jordan alluded to, and all utilities are included in rent as well.
Okay, so then the actual rent then would be based upon the applicant's income?
Yes.
Okay, and then the question I have, it was talked a little bit about, but I'd like clarity to it. It's the floor area ratio is what's discussed. Do you know what that is for the building and the proposed property?
Because the lot's being subdivided, so we're talking about just half lot, I believe the floor area ratio is 1:1, which is, I think, what the requirement is for that.
Okay, well, we are talking about the single property that's been clarified, so it's the acre and a half, or acre and a quarter, whatever that exact number is. So what is then the gross floor area of the proposed building? It's a simple division.
Yeah, so what you're saying, it's 1.0.
Yes.
You said you believe it is 1.0, so you do not know.
I don't have the exact number, no. So
Has that been calculated?
it has been calculated, I believe you have the numbers calculated as part of the process. So.
It's not, because they're requesting a different type of zoning, we didn't calculate it, but if it's 1:1, like the building is how many square feet?
The building's a little over 22,000 square feet.
Okay, so the lot is.
And that's why it's a little.
So it's probably less than 1:1.
It's probably less, because we're taking less than half of
Yeah.
the area of the 1+ acre site.
I have a large concern that the zoning board doesn't consider the floor area ratio when they're considering a change.
But the floor area is not being considered because it's not part of the request.
But that speaks highly to the density of a building given the land area. And when you're talking about changing the zoning, you're essentially doing that.
Well, but the floor area ratio that she's suggesting is way below than what you'd be required. It's essentially a quarter, so it's like 0.2 to 1 when you'd be allowed 1:1. So it's a 22,000 square foot building when you'd essentially be allowed 4 times that.
So the gross floor area ratio is 22,000 feet on this building.
Yeah, that's what she's saying, yeah.
Approximately, yeah.
The floor area to lot area, yeah.
Okay, but it still seems to me that was an important determining factor. I guess it's just raw data. And the fact that that's not fully known here just raises a concern for me as a neighboring citizen.
But Jeff, if we're only at a quarter of what we need to be, I don't think it's not on our criteria to look at in this meeting.
Okay.
Because that's not part of our criteria in that realm. But even looking at that, it's only a quarter of the requirement at this point in time. So if it was 1:1, an acre's 43,560 square feet.
Right.
That building's 22,000 square feet.
Okay.
So we're less than half at that ratio that we are in that lot.
And that's fine. I'm just curious because from what it seems, there's not a lot of extra space on the land. I just consider the residents there to enjoy life. You want a place where you can put a lawn chair. You want a place where you can throw a frisbee with a friend. You want a place where you can have a picnic. Or just enjoy the outdoor space. And that really, isn't there. And so it's kind of changing a bit of the landscape of the residential into what this is. And just a raw number would be to me that the floor area ratio speaks to that.
Well, and again, 43,560 square foot on an acre of land, and the building's 22,000 square feet. So I think we're definitely well below what the requirement is. And thankfully, Veterans Park is very close, so that outdoor space is readily available close to this development.
Okay.
And the one thing is, if they build one building and they've got all that space, and say there was double the amount of parking needed for some reason, there's all that land to the west that's not being built on.
Shifting gears a little bit, so then with this building being 15 feet off of the adjacent property line to the north, has the fire department looked at that for fire access? Are they gonna have to barrel down fences and, bust through someone else's property in order to?
It's not 15 feet off to the adjacent lands.
Okay, whatever the number is, I know it's close to the.
It meets the setback.
Okay, so but has the fire department?
The fire, if it's approved and they go for building permit, at zoning review, we look at the setback. But when it goes for actual building permit and they submit building plans, that's, they will certainly be consulted with, yes.
Why would they be consulted before they may be starting on a process that?
Because that is more of a function, if they meet the zoning setback, that strictly now becomes a building issue.
So that's not.
And we did, and they did, and I did send the plans to the fire district already, to Chief Heeman, I believe, a couple weeks ago. because it was a unique project. So we work with them directly. So
And again, on our criteria to make a decision tonight for the zoning changes, that is not on our agenda for that. When it goes to the building department, then that will have to be put into that plan as well.
And will that be reviewed where the city council would make their decision?
yeah, when we look at these plans, our inspectors upstairs who work with the fire district, I mean, they know those criteria. They work with the fire district. I mean, it's not like we're not guessing, and they know the requirements too. This is from hydrant, access around the building, and all that stuff. So that, I mean, we don't just guess at that. I mean, we don't want to go through this process and then say we missed something. So yeah, that's definitely taken into consideration before, even if we don't go through the full review.
But not specifically now before this board?
No, it is. I'm just saying the building portion of it is not taken into consideration yet because they haven't submitted a building permit.
I guess on that note too, I feel like there was a misstep being an adjacent property to this. This was supposed to be on the, I guess, the docket 2 weeks ago for this board, but I wasn't notified until I came to the community meeting, which I appreciate you guys doing, but I heard about that hearsay to be able to be aware of that. So as you're saying, that's why I really want to see the criteria of what you considered before, that they met before that. If they, saw that as a concern that, the adjacent property was not notified of the process. And I noticed that since then, the meeting got pushed back, and I did receive a certified letter in the mail. I'm just trying to identify if there are steps that are being missed, where, why, and how.
No, actually, that was their decision because we want to make sure that you were notified that they redid all the public notice requirements again to everybody, posted in the paper again, posted the signs again, just so nobody missed it.
Okay, well, there's no sign currently in the property.
Well, they did post it, and we have pictures of them.
Just recently reposted again?
Yeah, they reposted them.
The signs were knocked down because someone cut the grass.
Okay. Yeah, then I guess it gets more into the building, but as far as you're building a community or a house that's designed to house the disabled, but you're dramatically reduce the amount of handicap spaces, and that to me just kind of screams out to the point of you're trying to put too much into too little.
I don't think it was ever said that we were reducing the amount of handicap spaces.
No.
It's in the Illinois ADA code is what they're meeting that requirement.
They're not asking for variances, they have to meet that.
Well,
And that's dictated by state law.
I believe that number is 15%.
No, the handicap spaces is dictated by the Illinois Accessibility Code.
But of the parking spaces, I understand that.
Correct.
And I could be wrong.
Correct, and they're still providing two, even though they're asking for a variance.
Well, if it's 15%, it would be if you have 33 spaces, that should be 5.
Yeah, but it's not a percentage.
Yeah, it's a percentage that changes based on the number of parking spaces. So 1 per 25, 2 per 50. So any fraction between 25 and 50, we're providing 2 currently.
And that's per the ADA code?
Yes.
Okay. That's a different understanding of it. Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's really about it. I really think that this is that could be a good use for the space. But again, I just feel like you're trying to put too much into too little. If you could perhaps take the whole parcel, take a building like this, turn it sideways, drop it to 2 stories, extend it out, I think you'd have a home run. I think you're very close to what needs to be done, but having a 3-story building right next to residential, single family, I think is the wrong use for the space. And again, I would just argue that long term, that real estate could be very important to the revitalization of the downtown McHenry area. Given also too, we have a movie theater moving in, and parking spaces are a premium. You look at other communities, Crystal Lake, Woodstock, they all will have sufficient parking nearby in proximity to the area. That's going to bring people into the area. So I guess with that, I'll close my comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Lindsay, how many years of experience have you had with this type of project and stuff?
Sure. So Full Circle has been around since 1999. We acquired Goodlet Arms in Naples, Florida, the 250 units of senior housing in 2002, and have been kind of slowly growing within our model ever since. And our first development of housing specifically designed for persons with disabilities was the Milwaukee Avenue apartments that we completed 2 years ago with Porter and Clark as our architect, and also working with Over the Rainbow. But kind of how we got to that point was in, you know, that 250 unit acquisition, we found that the building was, you know, tons of people with disabilities and veterans were already living there, but it was a building built in the 70s where, you know, it is technically accessible, but it wasn't designed from the beginning to include some of the features that we're proposing here today. So that's why creating new construction and really taking into account not just the ADA code, but getting input from groups like Paralyzed Veterans of America, working with Over the Rainbow and even some of their tenants to figure out what is practically helpful for people with disabilities. You know, that's been one of our recent goals.
So it's fair to say you've took learnings from other buildings and applied it to this proposed McHenry one?
Yes, absolutely. And I think another advantage here is that while the exterior of the building is very different, the general floor plan and unit layout here is very similar to our Creekview development in Richmond. And we're using the exact same contractor, civil engineer, and architect. So it's a building where we get a chance to kind of hone in on you know, exactly what we need.
Thanks.
Last opportunity, excuse me, to approach the podium. If anyone would like to speak on this matter that did not sign in previously, please step to the podium. We'll have you sign in on your way out, please, if you would. Sure. Last one, you're it.
All right.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Veronica Gackenbach, and my business address is 109 South Jefferson Street in Woodstock. I reside in Crystal Lake, and I work with Schultz, McHenry County, as a housing specialist, and I work with people with various disabilities in finding affordable housing, especially those with mental illness and who have been homeless for a long time, some of which are also veterans. I was actually very excited when Creekview was first being developed. I've been assisting with housing location for 2 years, and I'm very painfully aware of the challenge of finding housing that is affordable, accessible, and available, especially for people who might not have excellent credit history or a large amount of income or a lot of rental history under their belts. We have several clients who are listed. Excuse me, I don't like public speaking. We have several clients who are leasing with Creekview currently and are very happy to live there. And we've seen great progress in their recovery. And I got the opportunity to tour the inside of Creekview recently, and I'm very impressed by how beautiful the units are, both inside and out. When you see it, it doesn't look like your typical idea of an affordable housing complex. A lot of times, affordable or Section 8 housing has a negative connotation to it, and these units definitely surpass that. And so when I heard that another development was coming up in McHenry, which is even closer to the heart of services on a public transportation line like Pace, I know you get that in Richmond too, but the need for affordable housing is so great, and I'm very glad that there is more of it. My speech was better.
Mine always is too, don't forget.
No, but in all seriousness, affordable and accessible housing, especially for those who have served, is just so necessary. And based on prior leasing experience, based on the units that I've seen so far, and based on the project proposal, I'm just beyond ecstatic to see this develop. I think it's very needed. I think it's in a great location in terms of accessibility to services in downtown.
Great.
Go full circle.
Thank you. Anyone else from the gallery that would like to speak? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Beth Taylor, 1501 North Green Street, McHenry, 60050.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say tonight that I think that this is a good fit for our community. I think it's important that we serve others that need help or provide housing for them. I myself have been working in healthcare for over 30 years, taking care of handicapped, veterans, and people of this community. I've born and raised in McHenry, lived in my house on Green Street for 30 years, raised my 2 children there, and I love the neighborhood. You guys are coming into a wonderful neighborhood if anybody's fortunate enough to become a resident here. My concern is just the size of the property, how close it is to the adjacent houses, and it's been said a couple times tonight, but a different spin on it perhaps. If there's 2 lots, why not build this first unit closer to the highway and give a little breathing space to those adjacent homes? And then if there is a need later, then reevaluate building the second unit. And also, or lowering it down to 2 stories, or putting some portion of the public cafeteria, dining, library space below grade, so that there's the height variance isn't overshadowing so much of the 1 to 1.5 story near adjacent homes. It's hard to imagine, and I realize that this isn't any taller than any of these buildings, but you're talking about a monolithic building that's much bigger. It's not postage stamp house size lots. It's on a full acre of something that size and that scale with no light air coming through in between, where you'd have normal spacing between 2 homes. That's it. I think that I have to say so. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call.
I have really bad anxiety.
You ready? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Stephanie Carbone, I live at 500 South Howard Street, Harvard, Illinois. It's the Over the Rainbow property.
Would you like to come to the table instead? It might be easier.
Sure, you guys can sign me up for the wait list.
That'll work as well.
So some of the things that kind of made me a little angry, so I just wanted to say that, like, a few of the issues, one being parking and the handicap spaces, because the building I currently live in is all people who are mobility impaired, and I believe only 4 tenants have cars, and there are 2 handicap spaces there. But there's so many other spaces, we make it work. You know, you just don't park next to someone that needs to get their ramps out, not a big deal. And as far as I know, this is independent living, right? This isn't assisted living? Okay, so it's not, with independent living, you have people that sometimes come during the day to help, you know, with activities of daily living. So they'll come and then they'll go. So that's the only real traffic you're gonna see. What were some of the other issues? I just wanted to say, in McHenry County, that's pretty much the only building that's accessible to me. I had a Section 8 voucher, and I lived, call them out, I lived at Fawn Ridge Apartments, and they were really trying to be accessible to me, put extendable hinges on the bathroom door, but I still couldn't really get in the bathroom. If I wanted to get in the refrigerator, I had to back up into the kitchen. So there's really not a lot out there for people like me, so I'm really excited to see this. Because Harvard is nice, but the location is not. Other residents of Harvard have complained about the wheelchair traffic going down 173 and 14. It's really dangerous because that's where we have to go to get to the Walmart. So being closer to shopping and the things that we need to have access to and being on the pace line is really awesome because Harvard really doesn't have anything. We don't have a hospital. All my doctors are out this way, so I am always in McHenry to go to the doctor, to the hospital. So these are just some things that I am excited about. Other people maybe not so much. So as far as this community being able to meet the needs of these people, we don't really have much. And so if you did put in a municipal parking lot there, you might still see the same people living there, they'd just be homeless. So we do need someplace to go, and shelters don't cut it for everybody, and they're really, I've been that route too, and they're not great. They also don't really have accessibility. So that's just where I'm coming from. So I'm just gonna welcome if anyone wants to ask me questions after this about where I live and how things work with that. I'm really nervous, sorry.
That's all good. Thank you so much.
So that's all.
Thank you. And we'll make sure one of them finds you afterwards to sign you up.
Yes, thank you.
All right, last call. Do I have anyone else from the gallery who'd like to speak on this matter? The two people who spoke, or three people that spoke afterwards, please see me to sign in afterwards if you would please. And at this point, the public portion of the meeting is closed. Additional questions, concerns from commissioners?
If anybody wants staff reports or any information, I did put some cards, probably not enough, but feel free to call. I'll give anybody any information they want. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
At this point in time, I would like to give the petitioner an opportunity to have a closing statement if you'd like. No need if you don't like to, so.
I would just, again, like to thank everyone who came out tonight and thank all of you commissioners sitting here today. We think, again, that this proposal meets the, priorities stated in your community planning documents. We think the need in the community and the excellent community partners that we bring to the table speak for themselves. And we believe that the zoning change that we're requesting and the variances are in general alignment with the portion of the city in which we're proposing the project. So we are excited to put this proposal forth, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Lastly, commissioners, we'll be taking this in 3 pieces. So there will be 3 different votes. One for the zoning map amendment change, one for the variances for the off-street parking and for the front yard setback with the conditions listed. And then lastly, the third vote would be for the approval of the preliminary and final plat of subdivision with the listed conditions as well. So in your packet, those 3 are listed under staff recommendations prior to public hearing. The first item would be those first 2 lines. The second item would be the second 2 lines plus the bullet points under that. And then the third is that on the next page 8 of your packet would be the approval of the preliminary final plat and subdivision with those listed conditions. At this point in time, if there's no additional questions or concerns from commissioners, I would be looking for a motion on that very first item, the zoning map amendment.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Walsh on the motion. Do I have a second?
Wait, what's the motion now?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The motion on the approval of zoning map amendment RS4 and C4 to RN2 for the subject property. Staff finds all requirements in table 33 of the zoning ordinance have been satisfied.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I have Mr. Meyer on a second. Any additional questions or concerns on the first motion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strack,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Sabota,
Yes.
Commissioner Thacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent. At this point in time, I would be looking for a motion for item number 2 on that, which would be the variances, and please read them in your motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, for the approval of variances for off-street parking and loading from 51 spaces to 33 spaces, and a front yard building setback variance from 30 feet to 15 feet with the following conditions. Do you want me to read them all? Bullet 1, site is developed in substantial conformance with site and landscape plans and building elevations as submitted.
Roger, I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize. You may just say that the listed conditions.
All right, the listed conditions of the 3 bullets.
And then hit me on the table. 32.
Staff finds that all requirements in Chapter 32 of the zoning ordinance have been met.
Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
By the way, we're not using the same shelters for the pace stop as they were using at O'Hare Field. All right, okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Miller on a second. Any additional questions or concerns on item number 2? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Sabota,
Yes.
Commissioner Thacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Strack,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Excellent.
motion carried.
Last but not least, item number 3 for consideration tonight, the preliminary and final plat of subdivision. I would be looking for a motion on that as well.
I'll make the motion for the approval of the preliminary and final plats of subdivision with the following 5 bullet conditions.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Walsh on a second. Any additional questions or concerns from commissioners on this item? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strack,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Sabota,
Yes.
Commissioner Thacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh. Motion carried.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll be in touch. At this time, I'd like to close file Z913.
Are you guys buying donuts? Buying donuts?
Maybe a drink.
At this time, before this room gets very loud, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Mr. Sabota, do I have a second? Mr. Thacker?